Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Today channel. Hope shocks Liam and Carter after Thomas returns. Hope Logan's return is not something Thomas Forrester desires. Hope Logan's return is not something Thomas Forrester desires. According to previews for The Bold and the Beautiful, Thomas Forrester has no intention of ever getting back together with Hope Logan. Getting back together with Hope seems to be the last thing on Thomas's mind now that he has returned to this made-up town of Los Angeles after spending some time in Paris to escape the turmoil. He's a different man, which explains why. You know what, he sees right through it. There is a difference between the Thomas Forrester who returned home and the one who departed for Paris. This will be perplexing for Hope, but it will also be somewhat alluring. If we've learned anything about Hope over the years, it's that she's the type of person who craves things that are out of her reach. What will happen to Thomas Forrester next? You can be sure that she will put in much more effort to find Thomas if she is unable to have someone like him. It's interesting to note that this means Steffy Forrester will have the opportunity to reunite with Liam Spencer if she so chooses. When it comes to matters of the heart, it's safe to say that anything can happen. Thomas, on the other hand, will undoubtedly surprise everyone with his next move. Stay tuned for more. The problems he left behind before leaving for Paris were not the only reason he returned home. This is going to get really interesting. Not surprisingly, B&B fans will only need to tune in every single day to see what happens next. On weekdays, the CBS network broadcasts The Bold and the Beautiful. Look up the timings in your local listings. Please share your ideas with us in the comments box below for the time being. For the most recent information and updates on your favorite celebrities, return here as usual. Spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful: Thomas Forrester is not in favor of Hope Logan returning. He has been there, experienced that, and has no desire to repeat the experience. Hope Logan's return is not something Thomas Forrester desires. According to previews for The Bold and the Beautiful, Thomas Forrester has no intention of ever getting back together with Hope Logan. Getting back together with Hope seems to be the last thing on Thomas's mind now that he has returned to this made-up town of Los Angeles after spending some time in Paris to escape the turmoil. He's a different man, which explains why. You know what, he sees right through it. There is a difference between the Thomas Forrester who returned home and the one who departed for Paris. This will be perplexing for Hope, but it will also be somewhat alluring. If we've learned anything about Hope over the years, it's that she's the type of person who craves things that are out of her reach. What will happen to Thomas Forrester next? You can be sure that she will put in much more effort to find Thomas if she is unable to have someone like him. It's interesting to note that this means Steffy Forrester will have the opportunity to reunite with Liam Spencer if she so chooses. When it comes to matters of the heart, it's safe to say that anything can happen. Thomas, on the other hand, will undoubtedly surprise everyone with his next move. Stay tuned for more. The problems he left behind before leaving for Paris were not the only reason he returned home. This is going to get really interesting. When Thomas returns, does everything change? Hope leaves Carter at the altar for Liam. I'm hoping Logan will have to make a big choice regarding the CBS soap drama. In order to strengthen their relationship through marriage, Carter Walton wishes to elope. Thoughts of Liam Spencer and their family frequently cross Hope's mind as she struggles to make that choice. Hope was prepared to give up on Carter months ago. She desired to walk away from him and never return. But Liam persuaded his ex-wife to give Carter another chance because he believed he was dying of brain cancer. He thought his daughter would get along well with Carter as a stepfather. Liam believed he had only a few months to live, after all. When Liam discovered Dr. Grace Buckingham's medical fraud, everything changed for him. She pretended that he had cancer in order to demand money from his father, Bill Spencer. Liam wants to take back his life and rebuild his family with Hope now that he is a walking dead man. Liam Spencer takes a risky action. According to previews for The Bold and the Beautiful, Liam will show Hope how much he loves her in the upcoming weeks. He acts quickly after finding out about Hope's plans to elope. Deacon Sharp tells Liam where Carter and Hope are getting married and invites Liam to attend their wedding. He admits that Hope still has feelings for him and thinks she will leave Carter if he shows up, but alerts Liam to the passing of time. Liam arrives just in time to implore Hope not to wed Carter. Liam wants their family restored because he loves her. Hope will probably cry and then say she's sorry for hurting Carter's feelings. Liam Spencer's side will be thorny with Thomas Forrester. According to spoilers for The Bold and the Beautiful, Thomas Forrester will make a triumphant comeback in early September. He wishes to get back in touch with Hope and let her see their son, Douglas Forrester. The added benefit is that Hope will be reminded of how much she values him by her presence. After seeing Thomas, Hope started to have second thoughts about her desire for Liam. She is obviously attracted to Thomas. She might not be prepared to give him the kind of commitment he needs, though. That might be the final straw for Thomas, ending Hope's relationship with him. Thomas's return had been a seismic event in itself, a carefully orchestrated moment of contrition and fragile promises, his presence a ghost at the feast of everyone's peace of mind, but it was the reaction that followed, the aftershock that truly shattered the fragile landscape of their lives. Liam, ever the moral compass worn thin by betrayal, had his posture rigid with a protective fury, his eyes fixed on Thomas with a look that could curdle Hope itself, while Carter, the picture of stoic reason, stood as a calm barrier between the past's transgressions and the company's future, both men united in a silent, firm agreement that Thomas's path to redemption would be long, scrutinized, and absolutely solitary, a man to be handled, managed, and certainly not trusted. It was into this furnace of judgment and weary suspicion that Hope Logan, the quiet heart of so much of their turmoil, stepped, not with a whisper of caution, but with a declaration that detonated with the force of a universe collapsing in on itself. She had listened to their carefully reasoned arguments, their valid concerns woven from the very fabric of Thomas's past manipulations, their voices a duet of grim practicality, and then she simply shifted her gaze from them to Thomas, and her entire being softened, not with pity, but with a ferocious, unassailable certainty. "He doesn't need to walk it alone," she said, her voice not loud, but clear and resonant, cutting through their logic like a laser, and in the heartbeat of silence that followed, she delivered the coup de grace, "because I'll be walking it with him." The sentence hung in the air, not just words but a fundamental rewriting of reality, and the shockwave it emitted was physical. Liam actually recoiled as if struck, his face draining of all color, his mouth slightly agape as he tried and failed to process the syntax of a statement that seemed to defy all known laws of reason and emotion, his mind short-circuiting as it attempted to reconcile the Hope who had been his anchor, the victim of Thomas's most heinous deceptions, with the woman now voluntarily tethering herself to him. Carter, the unflappable lawyer, lost his impeccable composure, his jaw tightening, a rare flash of utter disbelief in his eyes as he looked from Hope's resolved face to Thomas's, which was a mirror of stunned, tremulous gratitude, as if he'd been offered not companionship but salvation itself. "Hope, you can't be serious," Liam finally breathed, the words a strangled mixture of plea and protest, his mind racing through a horrific highlight reel of stolen kisses, manipulated emotions, and a mannequin's lifeless face, each memory a screaming contradiction to the calm assurance in her eyes. "After everything, the manipulations, Beth, the obsession, you would align yourself with him? Voluntarily?" But Hope stood firm, a new light in her eyes, one that wasn't the naive optimism of before but something harder, forged in the fires of her own suffering and introspection. "It's because of everything that I am," she stated, her gaze encompassing both stunned men. "I'm not the same woman who was victimized by the darkness in him, or the one who clung to a safe, predictable path. I've seen that darkness, and I've also seen the struggle against it. This isn't about forgetting or excusing, it's about believing in the possibility of a man's genuine change, and choosing to be a part of that change, to help ensure it's real and lasting, for Douglas, for our family, for him." She turned her head slightly towards Thomas, and the look that passed between them was one of such profound, quiet understanding that it was more shocking to Liam and Carter than any passionate kiss could have been. It was a look of partnership, of shared burden, of a bond that had been tempered in a crucible they hadn't been privy to. The office, once a stage for corporate power plays and familial disputes, had now become the arena for a spiritual revolution, and Liam felt the ground give way beneath him, his entire conception of justice and safety obliterated, realizing with a sickening lurch that the hope he had always cherished in her name was now being invested in the one person he deemed most undeserving. A betrayal that felt more intimate and devastating than any affair. Carter, ever the pragmatist, found his voice, though it was uncharacteristically hesitant. Hope, the risk, to the company, to your reputation, to your own well-being, it's immeasurable. This isn't a charitable endeavor, it's a potential disaster. But she merely smiled, a sad, knowing smile that acknowledged the risk and accepted it wholly. Living is a risk, Carter. Loving is a risk. But condemning someone to forever wear the face of their worst mistakes, to never allow for the possibility of grace? That's not a risk, that's a certainty of misery and stagnation. I'm not asking for your approval, she said, her tone final, leaving no room for debate. I'm telling you my decision. Thomas is back. And I am with him. In that moment, the shock crystallized into a new, cold reality for Liam and Carter, a paradigm shift so absolute it left them mentally reeling, stranded on the shores of a world they no longer understood, forced to watch as Hope Logan, the woman they both sought to protect in their own ways, walked calmly into what they saw as an abyss, but what her every fiber proclaimed was her chosen path to redemption, not just for Thomas, but for herself, leaving behind the suffocating safety of the past. For the terrifying, exhilarating uncertainty of a future she alone had the courage to envision. Thomas Forrester's liberation from the cyclical torment of his obsession with Hope Logan represents not merely a plot twist on the bold and the beautiful, but a profound and hard-won character evolution that fundamentally reshapes the show's relational dynamics. His return from Paris, marked by a serene and unshakable indifference, signals the birth of a man who has finally, and irrevocably, exorcised the demons of his past affections, and this newfound clarity is the very catalyst that threatens to unravel the carefully constructed world of those around him, particularly Hope herself, who is confronted not with the familiar, desperate longing of a man she could effortlessly manipulate with a mere glance or a moment of kindness, but with a disconcerting and impenetrable wall of apathy that she finds both baffling and, in a perverse testament to her own character flaws, irresistibly appealing. This seismic shift in Thomas's psyche is born from the ashes of profound humiliation and self-reckoning. The man who departed Los Angeles was a figure defined by a singular, all-consuming desire, a puppet whose strings were pulled by Hope's every whim, living in the purgatory of her mixed signals, a passionate kiss one moment followed by a cold dismissal the next. The promise of a future together constantly dangled just beyond his reach, contingent upon his perpetual perfection and penance for past transgressions. In Paris, away from the suffocating pressure of the Forrester creation's drama and the toxic echo chamber of his family's interventions, Thomas was afforded the rarest of commodities in that world, silence and perspective, the necessary distance to deconstruct the damaging pattern of his relationship with Hope and to see it not as a grand, star-crossed romance, but as a deeply unhealthy entanglement where he was forever the supplicant, and she the begrudging benefactor. The Thomas who has returned is not simply over Hope, he is immunized against her, having developed the antibodies of self-respect and a renewed focus on his own autonomy and the well-being of his son, Douglas, realizing that his worth cannot and should not be measured by the fickle approval of a woman who kept him perpetually in reserve, a backup plan to be utilized only when her primary choice, Liam Spencer, inevitably faltered. This transformation is evident in his every action and utterance, where once his eyes would burn with a desperate, hungry intensity whenever Hope entered a room, they now reflect a calm, almost detached politeness, a civility that is far more devastating than any overt hostility could ever be, because it communicates a simple, undeniable truth. She no longer occupies any significant space in his emotional universe. He sees through the you-know-what, recognizing her cycles of encouragement and retreat for what they truly were, not genuine love or even a conflicted passion, but a mechanism of control and a means to satisfy her own ego, ensuring that while she might pursue a stable life with another man, she always had a fiercely devoted and brilliantly talented designer waiting in the wings, his love for her ensuring his loyalty to her brand, thus making her professional success inextricably linked to his personal torment. For Hope, this unprecedented rejection is a psychological earthquake, a fundamental challenge to her self-perception as a benevolent, desired, and ultimately in control figure. Her entire identity has been built upon a foundation of being wanted, a being the object of affection in multiple love triangles, and Thomas's withdrawal shatters that mirror, forcing her to see a reflection where she is not the center of his attention. Her nature, as history has proven, is to covet most ardently that which is expressly forbidden or unattainable, a trait that defined her years-long rivalry with Steffi for Liam's heart, and now, faced with a Thomas who is emotionally unavailable and intellectually disengaged, she is paradoxically drawn to him with a greater intensity than ever before, not out of genuine love, but out of a compulsive need to reconquer, to reassert her dominance and prove to herself that she still holds the power to captivate him. This creates a delicious and ironic role reversal. Thomas, once the pursuer, is now the pursued, and Hope, once the elusive prize, is now the one orchestrating chance encounters and offering lingering glances that are met with nothing more than a bland, professional smile. This dynamic sends ripples across the entire canvas of the show, most notably freeing Steffi Forrester from her role as the vigilant gatekeeper of her brother's fragile mental state, no longer needing to protect Thomas from Hope's influence or from his own destructive impulses. Steffi can finally exhale and consider her own happiness, which undoubtedly opens the door for a potential rekindling with Liam, the man who has always been her own complicated soulmate, thus reigniting the central, decade-spanning rivalry between Hope and Steffi, but with the roles profoundly altered. Thomas's liberation, therefore, is not just a personal victory, it is a narrative bomb that destabilizes every major relationship in its vicinity, promising a future not of recycled stories, but of new and compelling conflicts. His next moves are shrouded in tantalizing mystery. Will he throw himself into his work with a reinvigorated passion, perhaps even launching a new line independent of Hope for the future? Could he find solace and genuine connection with a new love interest, someone untainted by the complicated history and baggage of the Los Angeles fashion scene, thereby presenting a true and mature threat to Hope's sense of security? One thing is certain, he did not endure the painful process of self-discovery in Paris only to return and step back onto the same emotional treadmill. His resolve is steel, and his disinterest is not a tactic but a hard-earned truth. This creates a rich, unexplored territory for storytelling, where Thomas is no longer defined by his love for Hope, but by his own ambitions, his love for his son, and his journey toward becoming a whole, independent man. The audience, accustomed to his predictable patterns of obsession and relapse, is now watching a protagonist truly evolve, and in that evolution lies the most compelling drama of all, the quiet, powerful strength of a man who has looked into the abyss of his own making, turned away, and decided to walk toward the light, leaving those who once held power over him to grapple with the unsettling silence he left behind, a silence that screams louder than any declaration of love ever could. Thomas Forrester doesn't want Hope Logan back because he has finally found something infinitely more valuable, himself, and that is a storyline no fan can afford to miss, as it promises to redefine legacies, rewrite destinies, and prove that on a soap opera, the most shocking twist of all is not a return from the dead, but a character's genuine, lasting, and empowering growth. Hope Logan and Carter Walton, conceived in the shadow of a terminal diagnosis and sustained by a sense of dutiful obligation, were always a beautiful facade built on a foundation of tragic lies, destined to crumble the moment Liam Spencer, the proverbial ghost at the feast, reclaimed his rightful place among the living. Carter's desire to elope was not merely a romantic impulse but a desperate gambit to cement a bond he must have sensed was tenuous, a preemptive strike against the inevitable return of the man whose selfless, albeit misguided, sacrifice had engineered their relationship in the first place. Hope's palpable hesitation, her soul adrift in a sea of memories centered on Liam and the family they built, was the first crack in that facade, a silent scream against a future she never truly chose for herself but rather accepted as a parting gift to a man she believed was dying. This entire romantic edifice was constructed on the morbid premise of Liam's expiration date, his miraculous return to health, having been cruelly duped by Dr. Grace Buckingham's malicious scam, doesn't just invalidate the circumstances of Hope and Carter's union, it annihilates its very reason for being, transforming a relationship of comfort and convenience into an emotional placeholder waiting for its true occupant to return. Therefore, Liam's bold, last-minute interruption of the wedding, spurred on by Deacon Sharp's characteristically self-serving yet astute counsel, is less a dramatic disruption and more a cosmic correction, a restoration of the natural order that Hope's heart had been yearning for all along. His passionate plea at the altar is the catalyst, but the explosion was always primed. Hope's tears and subsequent apology to the heartbroken Carter are the inevitable, painful fallout of a charade that could not withstand the light of truth and renewed possibility. In this moment, Hope's choice is seemingly clear and cathartic. She chooses the known quantity, the father of her child, the man whose love story with her has formed the backbone of her adult life. It is a decision that promises reconciliation, stability, and the healing of their fractured family unit, a triumphant end to a painful chapter. However, the narrative genius and profound complication of this scenario lie in the simultaneous return of Thomas Forrester, a specter from a far more turbulent and darkly passionate past, whose re-entry into Hope's orbit does not merely threaten her potential reunion with Liam, it completely recalibrates the entire equation of her heart and future. Thomas's stated mission, to facilitate a relationship between Hope and their son, Douglas, is a masterstroke of emotional manipulation, a perfectly justified and noble pretext that masks his deeper, unwavering obsession. His return is the ultimate wild card, a variable that neither Liam's earnest love nor Carter's dignified heartbreak had accounted for. For Hope, seeing Thomas reignites a complex tapestry of emotions that Liam's safe, often waffling, devotion can never access, a history of intense trauma, manipulation, and violation, but also undeniable creative synergy, a deep, abiding connection through their child, and a dangerous, addictive passion that exists in direct opposition to the sometimes tepid waters of her relationship with Liam. Where Liam represents a safe harbor, Thomas is the stormy sea she has both feared and been irresistibly drawn to. His presence instantly introduces a third path, one far more fraught with peril but also potentially more electrifying and authentic to a part of her she has long suppressed, the part that is not just a Logan, a Spencer, or a beacon of hope, but a woman of intense passion and complexity. This is why Thomas's return changes everything. It ensures that Hope's flight from the altar is not an endpoint but a devastatingly messy new beginning. She may run into Liam's arms, but she will immediately be confronted by Thomas's gaze, which will force her to question whether she has chosen Liam out of genuine, unreserved love or out of habit, comfort, and the powerful inertia of their shared history. Thomas becomes the living embodiment of doubt, the personification of the what-if that will haunt any reconciliation with Liam. He is the thorn in Liam's side not because he will necessarily scheme in his old, villainous ways, though that potential always simmers, but simply by existing as a viable, compelling alternative who connects with Hope on a level that is both paternal and profoundly intimate. Furthermore, Thomas's ultimatum, that he requires full commitment, a deal-breaker for which he is no longer willing to settle, raises the stakes exponentially. It forces Hope to make a definitive choice not between right and wrong, but between two fundamentally different versions of herself and her future. Choosing Liam means choosing safety, forgiveness, and a known path, a continuation of the story everyone expects. Choosing Thomas, however, would be the ultimate rebellion.